Hey guys, welcome back to Salty Ginger Talk. Thanks for coming back. Glad you're here. So, in today's episode, we are going to talk about some tips that you can use to get along with someone you disagree with. So, the impetus for this episode is really more about what I've been seeing, the behavior I've been witnessing around the upcoming US presidential election. So, a very polarized election. It seems like, as far back as I can remember, elections became very polarized. It seemed like it seemed to me like it happened when Clinton ran for reelection. And since then, they've been very, very divisive. And we've got a lot of people who, if you don't agree with them or their side, that you're sworn enemies forever. You can't associate, you can't have conversations. I think it's a terrible approach. I think you're going to encounter lots of people you disagree with. I think it's good for you to encounter people you disagree with. In fact, I would say you should seek out people you disagree with because it helps expand your mind, expand your thinking. You can listen to someone's argument without accepting it, without being insulting to them. And so when you disagree with someone, you should not excommunicate them. You should not ostracize them. You should not banish them. You should actually do the opposite. You should try to spend more time with them to see what makes them tick and understand them a little better. So that's the impetus for our episode. Right? We encounter many different people in life. Some of them we get along with great. We got a lot in common. Things just click, and it just happens. Some we don't get along with right away. We don't have a lot in common with them, and it's difficult to spend time around them or to get to know them better, I guess is a better way to say it. Your life will be better if you grow your circle of friends. And so if you disagree with someone, you need to actually reach out and try to establish a relationship with them. And we're going to talk about some tips on how to do that. It makes me think of Abraham Lincoln had a quote that said, "I do not like that man. I need to get to know him better." And I think it's the exact right way to think about stuff. So your life will be better if you grow your circle of influence, grow the people you know, grow the people you talk to, especially if they think differently than you or they hold different thoughts or opinions than you. And we're going to give you some techniques to have these conversations, to build common ground, and to develop a relationship with people. I'll share some personal anecdotes where this has worked for me throughout my life because just by nature, it's funny, I was talking to my wife over the weekend and I said, I really don't like being on Twitter. I don't post a lot on Twitter. And the thing I don't like about Twitter is it seems to be the place that people go with vitriol. So the whole point of Twitter is to make nasty or sarcastic comments about people or things you disagree with. And it's a real turnoff for me. I don't like it. I'm trying because like we're talking about here, I'm trying to get better at it and I read it a lot, but it's really hard for me to engage because I don't want to get in some verbal joust with a person. I would love to exchange ideas in a cordial and professional way, but that that doesn't seem to play real well on Twitter. And I'm not looking for thousands of likes or thousands of followers. I'm looking to educate myself and get better. But when we were talking about it, she said, "Well, that's the thing with you is that when you talk, you're kind of naturally polarizing. You have kind of a just like a magnetism or an aura about you that people either really like or really don't like," which I know is true because I've been me my whole life and I've been in large groups my whole life. I've been a leader in everything I've been involved in because I gravitate towards leadership positions. And part of being a leader is incorporating everybody in that group, even the ones that don't agree with you, even the ones that don't like you, even the ones that think differently than you. And I would argue they're the important ones to keep in your circle because they're going to see your blind spots. They're going to think about things in ways that you don't think about them. And they can be very, very useful if you're willing to check your ego, shut your mouth, listen, really listen to what they have to say, and consider their arguments. It's going to make you think better as a leader. It's going to make you make better decisions because you're going to have more and different information than if you don't do those things. So that's the whole point of the episode. That's what we're talking about today. So with that, let's jump into the 7 tips that we've come up with to help kind of facilitate this approach of these conversations. Number 1, listen intently. I can't stress that enough. When you're talking with someone that you disagree with, my natural inclination, anyone's natural inclination is to think of all the reasons you don't agree with them. to think of your witty comeback, to think of what you're going to say to put them in their place. That's the wrong approach to develop relationships. Go back to one of our episodes that says, do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? I would argue that in almost every instance, it's more important to be successful, unless legal things or moral things are involved, then it's more important to be right. But in almost every instance, being successful should be the goal. So before you disagree, before you interject, before you state your case, shut your mouth and listen to them. Ask them clarifying questions. I think I just heard you say this. Did I get that right? When I hear that, this is what I think. Am I thinking about that right? Or is that not what you're trying to say? Is that not what you're trying to get me to think? If you take that approach to conversations, you're going to be able to learn so much about what they have to say, and you're going to be able to draw out all of this knowledge and information that they have. And remember, even if you disagree with it, you now have it in your repertoire. You now have it in your mind, and you can use it as facts or opinions on which you can make future decisions on. And that's a good spot to be. So don't argue. Just listen. You're not going to look stupid. You don't have to win the fight. Just listen. Ask questions. It's a great way to go, because the other thing it does is it allows that person to feel heard. And when you repeat back, when you recap back what they said, that makes them go, hey, they really heard what I said. They're really listening to me. This is a conversation worth having. Now, look, sometimes you have people that are completely irrational. They're emotional. You can't get them to engage in these conversations. Come back another time. Try a different setting. Sometimes it's best to let sleeping dogs lie and revisit that conversation at a later date when cooler heads prevail, and you can have a less emotional or an unemotional conversation with that person. But most of the time, these techniques work and will help calm someone down so you can have a rational and useful conversation with them. Which leads us to point 2. Stay calm. It is not your job to blow up. And look, I have a terrible temper. I know it's hard to tell by looking at me, but I'm super Irish. And we fight and we drink. And I don't drink. I've never drank in my life. So I have to fight twice as much to make up for it. So I'm feisty by nature. I'm very quick-witted. I'm very quick on my feet. I process information quickly. I'm a nightmare in a debate. But that's not the point. The point is, if you want to be successful, stay calm. Keeping a level head, truly listening to what someone is saying, can actually help you be much more effective in your argument if and when you decide to make your argument. Don't let them bait you into emotional responses. Don't let them push your buttons. You have control over your thought process. You have control over your reaction. Go back and look at some of the videos and some of the episodes that we've talked about. Deep breathing techniques, meditation techniques, compartmentalization. All of those are things you can use to help you stay calm. So when you do engage in conversation, try to find common ground. You have common ground somewhere with people. You have to find it. That's your job. I can use a personal example on this one. So I've coached a lot of sports, and I coached baseball and hockey. There was a kid on my teams pretty frequently. He was a great kid. He was a great athlete. He was super coachable. I loved having him on my team. His mother hated me. I don't mean she didn't just kind of like me. She hated me. But she recognized that I was a really good influence on her son. She recognized that I was a really good coach. She recognized that I was a really good male role model for her. And her husband was a great guy. I loved her husband. Her husband and I got along really well. He was a salt of the earth, down to earth, super good guy. And I liked him a lot. But for whatever reason, she and I did not like each other. I didn't like her any more than she liked me, by the way. With that said, we were involved in all these sports together. And she was super organized and was very willing to confront people on administrative things like paying their fees, getting their paperwork in, turning in their fundraising stuff, all of those things. So every time I had her son on my team, I made her my team mother, which sounds kind of crazy because she was of all the moms or parents that I had on the team, she liked me the least. And I liked her the least of all the parents I had on my team. But I always made her my team mother once we kind of figured out, hey, we're going to be together. I had a son the same age as her son, and I started coaching him when he was 7. And so we had a long time together. And so I made her the team mom. And I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. She collected everything. She set up the hotels and the team meals. when we traveled. She did all of that stuff, and I could focus on coaching the kids, which was what I love to do. I love teaching and coaching. And so we found common ground in that we were both trying to do good things for the kids. She took the administrative side, and I took the coaching and leadership side, and it worked really well. And we never did wind up like, hey, holding hands and singing kumbaya. But we had a very good working relationship because we both recognized we were doing what we were doing for the good of the kids, which was what it was all about. So that was the way I found common ground with someone who really did not like me. And look, as a coach, I'm loud. I'm a big guy. I'm intimidating. I don't do that with kids because I don't think it's the right way to reach kids. You get more. You have to be loud sometimes because you're on a field or in an ice rink and they can't hear you if you're not loud. But you got to challenge them when they're not doing their best. You got to call them out on that stuff, and that's part of coaching. That's not always fun to hear or listen. I always say that the truth is like poetry, and most people fucking hate poetry, just like they hate the truth. And that's why I think I'm polarizing, is that I kind of live in the truth. And like, statement of fact, that just wasn't good enough. We're going to lose a lot of games if you keep doing that. You got to get better. And we're going to go over some things and teach you things how to get better, right? So that's how we found common ground in that particular situation. Next, keep an open mind. You don't know everything. I don't know everything. I say it a lot jokingly that it's too bad you didn't know me when I was 20, because I knew everything when I was 20. I was so smart. I knew everything. You didn't have to ask me. I would just tell you I knew everything. I was the smartest guy in the world. And I've gotten a lot dumber over the years. I'm now 52, and I realize I don't know shit. There's tons of people that know so much more about everything than I do. And if you keep an open mind, most people will give you tons of help, tons of information, tons of support at no charge. If you just keep an open mind, if you listen to their ideas, if you listen to their experiences, if you allow them to participate in the decision-making process, or at least the ideation process by which you make your decisions, you're going to wind up in such a better spot. So keeping an open mind and being not only open to other ideas, but seeking out other thoughts and ideas. Keeping an open mind is super, super important. Next, use I statements. And you've heard me do it in this video. I think what I just heard you say, or when you say this, I feel like, or when you bring that up, I think, those types of statements are good ways to convey your ideas without being adversarial, without being accusatory, without being emotional. So it's very important to say those things, because the other thing it does is it validates to the other person that they can tell you're listening, you're engaged in the conversation, you're hearing what they're saying. You're not just listening, you're hearing, and you're absorbing, and you're processing that information in a productive way. So using those I statements to either ask your question, state your claim, or verify what you think they're trying to say, super useful, super useful. Next, acknowledge feelings. And you can use I statements to express that as well. Now, when you acknowledge feelings, it's super important to avoid blame. Do not blame other people. Don't say, I think this went wrong because you suck. I think this is your fault. That's not the right approach. I understand you're disappointed. I understand you think I should have tried harder. I understand you're not happy with how things are going. Acknowledge those things. You can acknowledge those things without validating their opinion. So I have a friend who is a broker. He's a food broker. And in that job, you're kind of stuck in the middle between the buyer of the product and the seller of the product. So you're in a very tenuous situation. He said he used to have several phrases that he could use that would kind of move conversations forward, but he's not actually saying anything. So one of them was, we're working diligently towards an outcome. Now, that's a good statement. It means nothing. Of course we're working towards an outcome, and of course we're working diligently. He's saying nothing, but it makes people feel good that he's acknowledging, hey, we're all working on stuff and we're trying to get this done. So acknowledging feelings, I understand you're upset. I understand you're disappointed. I understand you're feeling anxious. Or it seems to me like you're upset. Is that true? Give them a chance to talk. It seems like you're angry. Give them a chance to vent. That's okay. Just absorb it. Just listen. Just listen. You don't have to fight back. This is how you get people on your side. You become an ally instead of an adversary. And that's what you're looking for with people you disagree with. You're not going to win everybody over, but you can develop good relationships with people you disagree with. And again, they're good people to have in your circle because they think about things differently than you do. And anytime you can surround yourself with smart people who will argue with you, you're in a really good spot because it's going to make you think differently. It's going to make you use logic and reason to approach problems. And that puts you in a really good position. So acknowledge those feelings. And then lastly, kind of like we just focus on the relationship. Don't focus on winning the argument. Don't focus on being right. Don't focus on making the other person look bad. Acknowledge that they have valid reasons for their views and avoid personal attacks. Well, like, you're just stupid. You don't understand because you're dumb. Well, you're just emotional. You don't get it because you're emotional. That's not the right approach. I use the Second Amendment a lot. And the way I find common ground on the Second Amendment, because you've got one side that's kind of hardcore Second Amendment, don't ever touch my guns, I can have whatever guns I want. And you've got one side that says, hey, gun control is the way to solve these violence problems that we have, these gun violence problems that we have in our country. What both sides absolutely agree on is nobody wants anyone to get shot. Nobody wants anyone to get shot. And that's a good place to start. The differences come in on how we get to that spot. But if you can keep people focused on, hey, we're both trying to solve the same problem and we're both trying to get to the same outcome, that's useful because now it's not an adversarial conversation. It's a problem solving conversation. And you don't view, it's not you bleeding heart liberal, you just want to get rid of all the guns, or you heartless bastard, you don't care about kids being shot in schools. Those are personal attacks and they're not the way to win people over. They're not the way to engage in unemotional, intelligent, fact-based conversations. They're the opposite. They're inflammatory. They're not useful. You got to avoid those things. Focus on the relationship. Focus on building the relationship. If you are going to say something about someone, think about, would you want someone to say that about you? And if you wouldn't, don't say it. There's other ways to say things. Let's say I am a Second Amendment proponent, and I am a Second Amendment proponent. Saying something like, I get it. I understand why you're so upset. We just disagree on the solution. That's not a personal attack. That allows for more conversation. That allows them to express their thoughts and feelings on the subject. Instead of you bleeding heart liberal, you just want to take people's guns away. That's stupid. That's a personal attack. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to help you with people. It's not going to make you feel better. You're going to wind up being angry about the conversation because it's not going to go well, plain and simple. So those are our 7 steps. I think if you use those, you'll find that you can develop common ground and develop a cordial relationship, if not a good relationship, even with people you disagree with. And I think that's something that we've really kind of lost focus on as a society. And it's terribly important for us to get back because after every 4 years we do this, and then every 4 years we're all in the same country with one government, one president, one society. And it's important for all of us to work together to make that society better. And we can't do that if we're busy calling each other names and thinking that anyone doesn't think exactly the way I do isn't worth having a conversation with, because it's just not true. You can get along with people you disagree with. Take these 7 tips, practice them in your conversations. Take one at a time. Practice one at a time. And as you incorporate them, I think you'll be surprised at how much easier it is to speak with people, even the ones, especially the ones you disagree with. So, okay, guys, that's our episode for today. I hope you found it useful. Thanks again for coming back and checking us out on our channel. Don't forget to head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. We've got a newsletter that we put out daily. You can subscribe to that newsletter over there. We've got all of our podcast episodes available on our website, and we've got links to our other social media accounts on the website. So thanks again for coming, guys. Really appreciate it. Everyone have a great week, and we'll see you next time.